Greetings and welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker Hagan, and I'm so delighted to be before you. Now, the purpose of Hot Topics from the Soul is to empower, inspire, and inform the community. So, this is why I do the show, and I have my co host with me.
And good afternoon and welcome everybody. So glad to have you on listening to us here on Hot Topic from the Soul. And we definitely want you to subscribe to the show. Your support is always welcome. And we try to bring to you, if you would, the topics of the day, the current trends, the hot topics, whether they're relational, whether they're political at times, or whether they are things that simply are answers that people are looking for. And so inside of that, we are all excited. I mean, particularly us here in the state of Florida. We, last week this time was bunkering down, preparing for a hurricane. And in the midst of that, life still went on around us, and particular life as it relates to the upcoming general election that is only about 20 days, 21 days away. And so many things are still in the air. So many questions are still out there. And that's what we want to do tonight. We want to help clear up some questions that people have come to us about, and they have expressed, what do? I don't understand these things. And on Hot Topics from the Soul, we're all about trying to get a clear understanding.
Absolutely. And Dr. J, I just celebrated my big 6'5". And for that, I've been asking individuals if they would support my nonprofit, the Soul of a Woman Foundation. So those of you that don't know, I have a nonprofit, which is for domestic violence and children in single parent homes. And actually, if you would donate to that foundation, you can find it on fromthesoulawoman.com. That's fromthesoulawoman.com. But moreover, what's free? Just go to the YouTube channel, Hot Topics from the Soul, and subscribe. Doesn't cost you a thing, but it would allow you to and me to know that you are supporting and you're standing by. Now, we are going to be discussing two of the amendments that individuals have reached out to me and Dr. J. They were confused about. And the first one we're going to talk about is Amendment 3. And I have Attorney Perry Thurston that is joining me tonight. He's an attorney and a former state senator. And I greet you, sir.
Well, good evening to you, Dr. Valerie and Dr. Thicklin, and thanks for having me. This is my first time on Hot Topics from the Soul.
Actually, this is your second.
Is it the second?
Yeah, you left an impression.
I can't believe you forgot me.
Well, maybe you're right. But look, I want to wish you a happy birthday also. You certainly don't look like you're 65, but it's a pleasure to be on here with you. And thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Got many calls about the amendments. We're going to talk about them all, not all on this show tonight. We will, bring them up, and then we will continue on either this week or next week, because the election is fast approaching and people are confused. We get mail-ins telling us this is the way you have to go. This is what we are standing for. And, talk about Amendment 3 and what that is all about.
Absolutely. And I think that maybe some of those calls are coming into you because of some of those commercials that you're seeing. So I happen to think that I have to start out by saying that Amendments 3 and 4 that you've referenced are the citizens-driven initiatives that are on the ballot. And the other 4 are there because of the Florida legislature, the majority legislature, that has put those ballots out there. But the 2 that you're focusing in, and the amendment number 3, because I know we have a really great dynamic attorney who's going to address the other one. Amendment 3, basically, to sum it up, it's a recreational marijuana decriminalization. And I say decriminalization because that's what it does. It decriminalizes recreational marijuana, allowing those people who are 21 years of age or older to possess up to 3 ounces and up to 5 grams of cannabis concentrate. The legislature would still regulate the time place, manner, and use of the marijuana, but it decriminalizes it. And I think that if you look back in history, you look back to the over policing of our community, that's why we have this decriminalization. Now, there are things that I don't like about the way marijuana sales are in the state of Florida. However, I think that for purposes of righting the ship, we do have to decriminalize marijuana, and there are ways to do it. I know that some of the commercials talk about what happens in other states, things that they've seen going on in other states. Well, it should be noted that this amendment, along with the other amendments, you have to start out with, where are we right now? Where are we in the state of Florida? Where are we in this nation? Where there are a number of men who have been arrested and incarcerated, and there are people incarcerated right now based on marijuana. However, there are also people who are making lots and lots of money at this point doing the same thing that some of those people who are behind bars have done. So I look at it as the decriminalization, and it's the regulation as we move forward will still be the same as alcohol. We regulate alcohol, we'll have to regulate marijuana uses. The benefits of it is that you're going to have more and more money for public education, as well as for our first responders. That's where the proceeds are supposedly going to. Clearly, we have to stay on that, because it was the same thing said with lotteries. And
I was about to say that.
Oh, yeah. I think that we all remember those bait and switch tactics, but that's where it's upon us to continue to hold their feet to the fire of what's supposed to be done. But it's supposedly first responders and education, which are two areas that we know we need help with. However, there are some concerns, and the concerns from the television ads is that there are states who have legalized marijuana, recreational marijuana, because we already have medical marijuana. There are states that have legalized it, and people think it's out of control. But we also regulate tobacco smoking. There is regulation, and we have to enforce that. We need to make sure that it's not being utilized on the streets or as people are walking down in public areas. That can be done the same way the cigarette smoking. I think that sometimes when I look at it, quite frankly, in my family and friends, most of whom do not smoke at this time, I think a lot of people have been ashamed and embarrassed by all of the laws that force them not to smoke in certain places. And I think if there's a problem with the usage, we'll have to do the same thing.
Well, my problem I have with it is we've already said it's okay for medical marijuana.
Right.
Okay, so saying it's okay for recreational, you know good and well people don't abide by the law. They do what they want to do. They go, like, say if there's an area where they can smoke, they smoke the marijuana there too, because it says smoking section.
Right.
So if you're legalizing it for them to go ahead and do that, it's like giving a free pass. Well, everybody be done puffed and did what they want to do. By the time somebody comes and say, hey, you can't smoke that, they've already lit up. So,
I agree with you. And Dr. Valerie, you're absolutely right. I think that it's something that we're going to have to rely on law enforcement and insist. Hold on. We're going to have to insist that they do their job, because it's not just so much as the revenue that we get from this, and there is a substantial amount of revenue that will come in, but it's also the problem. In my other life, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and I don't know if you all know about this fentanyl epidemic that's out here. Well,
Absolutely.
we all may have experimented in certain things early on in our life, but the young people these days in our community, they're dying based on those experimentations. These drugs are laced with fentanyl, and the people who are out there
Mushrooms.
and they don't have any care for these kids' life and their health. So that's why we talked about regulating and making sure that the drugs, that the marijuana is, and again, the marijuana these days is a lot more potent when we were growing up in these communities. So to have that, and then to have the threat of life in the drugs, there are so many deaths from fentanyl where people didn't know they were getting that in their marijuana. At least this way we're regulating it and we know exactly what's in there when our youth are consuming it. Now, I for one would advocate for them not to consume marijuana, especially at a young age when they may not be able to actually handle the consumption. However, if they are, and a lot of times you just have to acknowledge our young people do things that we advise them not to do, but I certainly wouldn't want some of the things that many of us have done in the past to come back to be a life-ending experiment for our youth. And that's how we can protect them, by making sure that it's marketed in the right way.
But Mr. Thurston, would you not say, as well as this may be written, it's still a two-edged sword? It's a two-edged sword for this reason. When we talk about the decriminalization of marijuana, and we're talking about, okay, we've done all the studies, 3 ounces, folks, only 3 ounces. Well, who really obey that? Number one, we know that. Number one, but number two, we're still saying, well, if you violate it, law enforcement is going to have to enforce things. Well, what type of penalties are going to be? What type of penalty that is going to be imputed upon those that do violate it? And if they do, if those penalties are not spelled out, aren't we doing exactly the same thing that we're trying not to do? I mean, we've got a lot of people, especially our people, that have spent time behind bars, behind marijuana, the consumption, the selling of it, and those things there. And I think I understand the reach. I understand the approach. We need to decriminalize this because other folks are making a whole bunch of money off of it, because that's what we see. But I think the two-edged sword for many people is the fact that we're still putting this in the hands of people's free will. Okay. We all understood how tobacco, you talk about that. I can recall growing up, and when I was a young boy, I could go to the store, the gas station, and purchase cigarettes from my mom when I was 8 and 9 years old, right? They didn't do any of those things. Over a period of time, we changed things for different reasons. States have come up with law. Florida was one of those early states with the Clean Indoor Smoking Act.
Right.
Now that life seemed to be so accelerated, and as you so well said, fentanyl is something that is so dangerous. Right. And it's so dangerous. And if you're not, and it is so easy. That's the part I'm concerned about. If you legalize it and you regulate it, it to me becomes even easier for those that are lacing things with fentanyl to be able to do so. Because
the problem, the answer to that, Dr. Thicklin, is that the corporations who are going to be doing this will be more liable than somebody on the street who is just trying to make a buck. They're not going to be, you're not going to get fentanyl just like you don't get it in the medical marijuana. The people who are dying on the fentanyl are purchasing on the street, unregulated. And you're right. We have to enforce it, and people will and should be arrested if they're driving on our streets under the influence. The same thing as if someone was with alcohol. Alcohol is legal, but you can't be intoxicated driving on the streets with alcohol, and you won't be able to do that with marijuana either. Right now, the study showed that there was 700,000 people in 2018 arrested for marijuana use. That's over 40% of those drug arrests was for marijuana.
Yeah, but how old were they?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't have those statistics, but I do know this, that you can't have that much of law enforcement time directed to marijuana when you got fentanyl out here killing people. I'm not saying that marijuana is not maybe a gateway drug, but I'm saying that the bulk of our resources shouldn't be directed towards that. And then you also have a situation where in our community, we consume marijuana about the same percentage, but we're 3.5% more likely to be arrested for the same thing that in the majority community, they're doing the same thing. So it's an over policing of our community that will lessen by the decriminalization. I think that the benefits outweigh the cost. And I do think that we have to look at it always, even with your other amendments, you have to look at, well, where are we right now? And how does this legislation affects us? Does it push us back? Or does it push us forward? And I think that you're going to see that this decriminalization moves the ball forward for us, for our community, and for our state.
Well, we're going to bring in our other guest. Attorney Smith Gordon is going to be joining us, and she's going to talk about Amendment 4. And then we are going to collaboratively talk about these two amendments. But I strongly disagree, because I think it would put a lot of our people in jail, because the amendment is to legalize it from 21 on up.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
know how many of our people that are 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 that are buying it, and they're buying it off the street? So it's not going to eliminate them getting access to fentanyl, mushrooms, or anything else, because of the fact that they're going to continue to buy from where they're buying from. And we are going to add.
Hello.
Good evening. Dr. J, introduce our guest.
What a riveting conversation.
It's the one that, Attorney Gordon, it's one that is interesting. You get stuck at the coffee pot with this question being asked of you about the different amendments, and very similar arguments in terms of this. Because at one end, if I had to write this law and I couldn't write it, I would have to write it with, let's see if we can write some type of, if you would, some type of reward of what we look for if you, once again, our 40 acres and a mule for those that have gone to jail unjustly for marijuana in past. Can we find a way to loop that in, because of the fact, I'm afraid that, just like Attorney Thurston says, at the end of the day, law enforcement is going to have to enforce this. And once again, we are overly, if you would, police with this. There's nothing, in my opinion, that's going to stop them from overly policing us inside of it. I think, and the reason I say that is this: the disproportion of who they arrest is still based upon their determination, what they see. My first time ever seeing anyone smoke marijuana, whatever, growing up, was from the majority community, wasn't from our community at all. There are a lot of things that I saw first there before I ever saw it in my community. But the folks I saw go to jail and be arrested all looked like me. So I didn't know if they had the right flavor and we had the wrong flavor, but I knew that it was disproportionate. And I think that's the question for some. I understand the decriminalization. I also understand the fact that, that people are making money from this, but I am concerned about how does it affect our younger people? Will they now buy this from people? I mean, if it's so many questions out there, but
well, let me answer that. All right. So I know that we know each other, but for your audience, I'm Salesia Smith Gordon. I'm a local lawyer. I spend a lot of time, though I'm not an elected official, I spend a lot of time studying and interchanging with politics. So for this particular question, as you all have been bantering around, those children who are 14, 15, 18 years old, if they are buying from the streets, you're not going to necessarily prevent this. Amendment 3 does not prohibit something that's already prohibited. You cannot prohibit a federal law that's already prohibited. So when you're looking at, so let me try to demystify some of this stuff.
Great.
When you're looking at some of the commercials, there's one I think it's actually kind of cute, and it's a guy going in his backyard trying to plant something. What you're not supposed to be planting it anyway. So I mean, it's
Yeah, that one.
you know that one. It's very true that those people. Now, one of the things that and you will see this, and I think it's very important for your viewers to know this. It is critical, though we're talking about the ballots, it is critical to know that you can go to the supervisor elections website and pull up your own ballot. In fact, I have mine up on the screen. I could share it. So you could actually see the verbiage. Be prepared before you go in to vote or vote at home. You know, if you're going to go physically into to vote, number one, please go early. You can vote at 26 locations in Palm Beach County without worry. Just go early. But if you are dead set on going the last day, then be there before 7 o'clock. And when you go in there, you can take your own cheat sheet. You can take it. You can take your notes if you want to, so that you can remember, because when you get in there, you're going to have those pages and pages of 6 amendments and other constitutional officers that you're voting for, like the sheriff or the state attorney and the judges. Don't skip those.
Right.
Okay. So take your own cheat sheet, be prepared, and hopefully our conversation will prepare you. So Amendment 3, look, will people just be randomly arrested? No more than they're randomly arrested now. The thing is that the recreational marijuana has a lesser dosage than the medical marijuana, right? It will still have a lot number, just like you go into a pharmacy or you go to, I don't smoke, but anything that you purchase has a lot number, has expiration date in, and has those particular governmental nuances on it because it's a taxing structure. And it will have that on it. So if you are purchasing your weed or oils or whatever you're purchasing through a distributor, and you are stopped by law enforcement and you have your card or whatever they give you to showcase that you have actually purchased this marijuana and not from the street, then you're fine. You should be fine. So you can play devil's advocate with me, but that's how it really should go. You should have less people than arrested and placed in jail for what we would call minor infractions of something of marijuana that's on their possession. Now that is different than trafficking and selling. Okay. Amendment 3 does not deal with that particular issue. For that, you're going to have to go to Attorney Thurston for representation, because that's fine. Okay. So it is really to try to level the playing fields. But I will tell you straight up, there is one word in the legislative enactment that gives me pause. It is not part of the ballot information, but I like to read. And it's and the people who are already in this marijuana game, who are your growers, your distributors, your manufacturers, they are really about to get paid, because it is for existing businesses.
Tell that to the people in the hood.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
Now we will have a riot. No, I just.
The people in the hood have their own business enterprise. I'm just saying don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just telling you what the law says. Okay. No, but really, it's just different. So the medical marijuana will stay the same, which is a different and a higher concentration than the recreational concentration. How they're going to differentiate that's probably by lot number. I really do think that the arrests will go down. What we don't know, and perhaps Attorney Thurston does know this, I certainly don't, and that is what happens to those people who are already incarcerated.
Yeah,
that's the big question.
That's a big question.
Reparation I'm looking for.
That's right. But you got to start somewhere, and this amendment does not address that. So you have to start somewhere. Personally, I vote yes on Amendment 3. Straight up, that is my vote. Okay.
And I vote yes too on Amendment 3, and I think that Attorney Smith Gordon has highlighted a number of factors. And when we talk about her point about the existing manufacturers and owners, that was my problem with all of the marijuana laws. They had what called this vertical alignment, meaning that they only gave licenses to people who could grow, manufacture, produce, and most of the people in our community didn't have the resources to do those things. So you're not expanding the market so that little guy in that commercial can actually compete with saying if it was horizontal and they could take one aspect of it and say, well, I'm going to do this, then that would have gotten more people into the market. And there's not enough licenses for people in our community, people from the original people in this community. The market is sort of skewed towards those who are in there. And as Attorney Smith Gordon say, they're about to get paid because they're not sharing the wealth. There are a couple of licenses for Black farmers that they've been fighting over for years and years that, I would hope that, I was hoping that they would come together so that we would have a stake in the game. But that's one of the problems with it.
Yeah. And so that brings us to that, once again, and it seems like history repeats itself. We went through the whole thing and, period of time from alcohol and all those things there. So once again, the thing that have hurt our people being, locked up behind marijuana and those things there. I mean, all of us remember, Pretty Ricky. He was a known dealer inside of that. Now we legalize this thing, and the Pretty Rickies of the world are left out. Period. But
well, I think that there should be legislation to follow to remove some of those convictions, as well as, you can't pay you're not going to be able to reimburse people for the time that they've done, but certainly you should be able to remove those type of convictions for some of the records. I think that's going to be what you're going to see in the future days. And some states are doing it already.
Yeah. And it concerns me for this reason here, because once again, not that I'm in this game here, the people who did it and got arrested years ago, now we make it legal, and they're not even able to benefit now from that same game because they're not one of those established. So once again, from my perspective, like I said, and I don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to the point of, who's really benefited from it. But once again, I still think that those that are benefited from it are not the ones who's paid the price and going to prison.
No,
so now,
but that's true. That's true. But laws evolve. Every year we have an evolution of laws to some extent. Senator Thurston was there watching and part of making that sausage, and that's not a pretty sight, but it is our democratic way. And so because of that, you cannot have, when something is legal, when you have laws in effect, there are times when you can go back and you can make some adjustments. It might be a situation where if the person only has that infraction, they are then released from prison or released from jail. But you can't go back and change all of that history because it is marred with other things. There may be other counts, and so just take it for where we are today, and that is to prepare for the vote.
Wow.
First step. That's the first step.
Okay, but since we want to move on to Amendment 4, I'm going to circle back to Amendment 3.
I was waiting for you, Dr. Val. I was waiting.
We're going to circle back to Amendment 3 because I personally know mothers whose sons have been in ICU and they're 23, 24, 26 years old who have went to herbal stores and gotten tainted stuff where it has been laced. So, saying it's okay, I think it's going to open up a whole gamut of problems for us as people of color, because nobody, especially these young folks, they don't play by the rules. They still beat to the sound of their own drum. They do what they want to do. You tell them about gun safety, not bringing guns in school, and yet if there's a shooting, they go on social media and they post, I'm going to blow up I'm going to shoot up the school. So I think situations like this will open it up for it to be a more of an increase of imprisonment, and also the laws that we are writing and saying we're gonna compromise. We're gonna come down the middle. There is no compromise and down the middle when it comes to people.
Wow.
I hope there is. I mean, we live our lives that way for compromise. I mean, none of us gets, well, let me back up on that one. Most of us don't get exactly what we want when we want and how we want it.
Right.
There's a compromise.
And Dr. Valerie, I can tell you, during the legislative sessions, I used to always argue with a lot of my majority colleagues.
You was like me.
When they, not like you, but they thought, some of them thought like you, but they were different than you, because these are people who were out there at University of Florida and Florida State doing all the things that they were getting ready to criminalize against people who look like us, but they just didn't get caught, or they were in a situation where they were in that 3.5% more arrests or over policing of their community. So it's not like they had clean hands. It's just that they were protected a lot more than our brothers and sisters and Ray them. But now they're being on their high horse, criminalizing these things and affecting our communities.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, evolution, and you talked about laws do evolve. I mean, we're living where we're living now because laws have evolved inside of that. And I think that what makes this seem so, if you would, contentious is just with all the other things that are happening. But by the same token, let's look at it from this perspective. These are citizen-driven amendments.
That's correct.
Which is the voice of citizens, and not necessarily that of lawmakers who kind of sat there in their lab in a petri dish and say, hey, let's come up with this. And so, so that is some hope there that perhaps it could evolve into something. And I'm just trying to find a way to at least get the 40 acres and a mule for those that have gone to.
I don't think you're going to get that 40. I don't think you're going to get that 40 acres and a mule. And that's why I was concerned about some of our comments off air earlier about what amendments was really concerning to our community, because you just hit nail on the head, Dr. Thicklin, when you said these are the citizens-driven initiatives. Well, the legislature had all the opportunity and ample time to do these things, but they didn't abide by the will of the people. The small class size amendment, that was a citizen-driven initiative. And you would say, well, why didn't the legislature act on this? Why didn't the legislature act on any of these things? So, and like Florida has made it so difficult for citizens-driven initiatives. Other people are voting on the amendment that Attorney Smith Gordon is getting ready to talk about, but they don't have such a high burden to actually win on it, because Florida has increased the percentage of vote that you have to get on citizen-driven initiatives, not to mention all the obstacles they put in the way of the people who got these petitions for Amendment 3 and 4 that we're talking about here today.
Thanks so much. Thank you. That's
Attorney Gordon, we need to shift to 4 so we can make sure that you have time to expound on that for clarity for individuals, please.
Okay. All right. Amendment 4 is your abortion access. It limits government's interference in a woman or the woman and the family making decisions about her own body. It limits the government from HIPAA violations. I just don't get it. But I understand that many of audience members may have their moral beliefs about abortions. And I don't take that away from anyone. But this is about health and morality together, I suppose. But this is about a person making decisions about her own life. So we're talking earlier, you talked about commercials. I saw one today. I just returned from a funeral and I was at home. And it was with a medical doctor who happens to serve on the medical board. My mom served on the medical board several years ago. And he was talking about the laws as they exist. And when we look at these amendments that are on the ballot, I figure some lawyer had to write them, Lord bless us, because it can be a bit confusing. But what he said was he tried, and the way he did it was really nice. And he says, there's no law that prevents abortion. That is in part true. That is not in whole true. There is one word that he used, but it's on your ballot, and that is the word on your ballot is viability. That's the one word. As I say, words matter. And so when there is, he says, when there is a heartbeat detected, no, he says, as long as there's no heartbeat detected. Well, if there's no heartbeat detected, there's nothing in there. Okay. Right. So when there's a heartbeat detected, then physician cannot do abortion unless the patient's health is in peril. Well, who makes that decision? Now, we've had already deaths of women and all kinds of calamities because doctors didn't know when that time of perils of the peril, meaning death, pending peril, is going to occur. So the patient stays in and she bleeds out, or she goes into cardiac arrest. The fetus is dead. Now the patient is about to die. She's got a child at home. What happens to the child at home? Who's going to take care of this child now at home that's now doesn't have a parent? So it is a very complex situation that Amendment 4 allows not for government, and you're having to go and disclose or talk to government officials and convince them that you need to have this procedure any more than it should be for a man to have to go talk about getting snipped. Okay. Or I'm just keeping it 100 here.
Right.
Or,
Yeah, men wouldn't allow that.
Exactly.
Let me be queen of the earth for a day. Okay, let's see what happens. So, okay. But really, there are, I think we cannot I'm a Christian, but don't get bogged down into matters that are optional for an individual. And that is what Amendment 4 protects. Individual decisions, individual rights, and when I say individual, the woman's or the family's rights, not an elected official who has no idea about your health, doesn't know what kind of, and then if you're raped, you got to go prove that you're raped.
Yeah.
You're supposed to know that you're pregnant before heartbeat, and you're not even sure. You might have not even conceptualized that you have missed your cycle.
Exactly. You black out, especially when you're faced with trauma.
Right.
Or even there's no trauma. You just realize, oh, I didn't realize this.
Right. Just simple calendar miss.
Yeah,
right.
Just didn't realize that. And you have other health concerns that impacts your life that these officials who have no medical license, if they do, God bless them, we are in a world of trouble, and have no business in my medical records in the first place. We got HIPAA laws. They got their own, by the time they take care of their own health, you ain't got time to take care of mine. And to criminalize physicians who are there and take an oath to protect people's health, you're taking that away and saying, if you commit this particular procedure and we find that you should not have, that you are going to be imprisoned. That is what a no vote will do. Continue as we are now, which imprisons physicians and allows for governmental interference, and that you only have 6 weeks in order to have the abortion. That's all you get is 6 weeks right now. It started as 15. Florida DeSantis changed it to 6 weeks. That's all.
And that's like a permanent ban. 6 weeks, no, most people won't know whether they're pregnant or not. And if you don't do it in 6 weeks, that's almost making it one of the harshest laws across the nation.
Right. Now, there is also a commercial on television that got me very curious. And it's a woman who says, it's a physician. And she says that she's a physician. And she says that she has to get consent to give her patient who is under the age of majority, a minor, Tylenol or something like that. Okay, right. But that Amendment 4 does not require a parent to have notice. That I just want you to know, and I'm going to read from, if I can, from the actual ballot. I am looking at my ballot. Okay. And it says that in the second sentence, this amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or a guardian before a minor has an abortion. So I just fact checked her, because this is actually the words on the ballot. So the parent still has to be notified in Florida.
And I think your focus, Attorney Smith Gordon, on the doctors that we see in the commercials is what the confusion that Dr. Valerie and Dr. Thicklin was talking about. These doctors, and some of the stuff they're saying is direct opposite. So somebody's not telling the truth. So it's good that you, they're playing with words. But it's good that you fact checked her, because the way I look at this is you look at where we're at right now, and then I discount those doctors and their expertise. I think that this is an issue between a woman and her doctor. And her doctor. Nobody else, no government entity should be interfering with what the woman decides with her doctor and her family. Now, all these other experts who are twisting and turning the facts, I would have to tell my community that that's not what it's about. It's about the woman's decision with her doctor, and therefore I vote yes on this amendment as well.
Absolutely.
Now, so let me say this, because it's interesting what you said, because I've seen that same commercial.
Yeah.
And on that commercial, they actually highlight this thing saying without parental consent.
Oh, but it's on the ballot, so that's why I said it is.
So that is part of the confusing. Allow me
so much fake news going on. So much fake news.
Yeah, absolutely.
But here again, your audience, the voters can check for themselves, because it's on the ballot. It's the second sentence of ballot of Amendment 4 on the ballot. It clearly states what I read.
Attorney Gordon, you know what you say is so powerful. And the thing is, you said if they would just check. My favorite book says, "Our people perish for the lack of knowledge."
That's right.
It's open to everybody, but people choose what they want to participate on. Google is so accessible. You can Google everything else. You can go on all your social media and plaster things on social media. But when it comes to life-changing decisions, we won't register to vote. And if we're registered to vote, we won't go vote.
Yeah.
And we won't read about individuals and see what they're talking about, see who they are and what they have and why it concerns us. So this is why I wanted you two guests to come on, not to get me and Dr. J's opinion, but also outside voices so I can give you my inside voice.
Well, Dr. Valerie, you sure shared your opinion on my Amendment 3. I heard you loud. I heard you loud and clear, Dr. Valerie. I heard you.
Yeah,
But and back to Amendment 3, Attorney Thurston, you're saying the police are get involved. The police are already overworked. When there are real issues going on and we call them, it's a shortage of law enforcement. So they're not going to be interested in stopping minors who are smoking up the place. Somebody call and say, I got all this marijuana smelling all in my complex and my child is affected by it. We don't have the police, the manpower to police this.
You know what, Mike? I'm sorry. I got to interject. You know what my concern is?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the police power, because I think that will be decreased. At least that's my hope. I'm sorry. I mean, that kind of interferes with Senator Thurston's livelihood there. But I'm concerned about people in jobs. Because many jobs, you have to be drug tested.
Absolutely.
State jobs, you're randomly tested. Mm-hmm. You're driving for
yes.
I handle tractor trailer cases primarily, in car accidents and tractor trailer cases for people who are injured. And so, I'm wondering, okay, well, that's going to be interesting because there's going to be a lot of drug testing here. There should already be. But when it's legal, how does that square with the companies that indicate that they are a drug-free company? Right, how does that going to square with people, whether you're going to a governmental job, a big pharma, and you're going to a drug test? Is that going to prevent you from getting a job, even though it's legal? So there's some questions there that people need to think about, even though I'm going to claim that it's going to be legalized. But there's still things that people, your viewers need to make sure that they understand that even though it's legal, that doesn't mean that that's going to square well with whomever you're working for. That's not necessarily contractual, which is what your job is.
And that's an interesting point that you made, because when those type of things start happening, and they happen in, say, for instance, a lot of minority communities, will we cry racism, or really the issue is the law? Inside on one end, the law gives you permission to do so, but on the other end, internally, your job says, hey, we're a drug-free place, we can test you, and perhaps even in the language, you could be terminated, for violating. And so it is an interesting twist inside of these things. And I don't know, why is it always Amendment 4? Our last big Amendment 4 in the state of Florida, which was restoration of fellas' rights.
But we know how that turned out.
And we see how that turned out. And so it is those type things that also leads people to, although they do read, they read what they read, but the actual enforcement of it looks different, or what happened. That becomes also the confusing factor for people, and people will tend to take the low road and say, listen, I'm not going to worry about all that. I'm just going to do what I do. And I think those are the type things that when these things come up, and I know that sometimes it is a slow walk. It is, we're getting there. We're getting there, but it leaves so many things out there. I look at it, and let me say this, even with Amendment 4 here, in terms of, the whole abortion, as you said there, the whole part about abortion, my moral beliefs may be different than the things I see, but here's something I thought about in reverse. If there was amendment being championed that abortion was mandated for people who had over X amount of children, or people who make less than a certain amount of income, imagine the uproar that would happen. Imagine how the argument would flip, because all of a sudden you're saying that you're going to terminate, you guys have a right to terminate my pregnancy because of certain factors. Mm-hmm. But when we take it in reverse, and I like to look at it this way, particularly in my circle of people who says, how can you advocate for abortion? And my thing is that it's not that I'm advocating for abortion, but I am saying to the fact that if there's going to be a law that prohibits, then what we're saying is that it cannot happen, or it should not happen, which is different from if there was a law that said this must happen. And I think when they're talking about must happen, it's a whole different consequence from a person making a decision about their body. You know, I've dealt in domestic and sexual violence for over 30 something years. I've dealt with victims that have been raped. I've dealt with people who have had children of their rapists. I've dealt with it. I've seen those things happen. And I don't know if that's the place for the law to make that decision for people. I don't think that is a place inside of that. Having said that, however, I do think that there has to be some things in place that hold check and balance, because if I'm writing this, I think that the medical doctors and professionals should have a whole lot more say in this thing than what they do, because to now put their careers on the line, for them to almost betray their own oath that they took, you know, it's kind of twisted there. And that's just my opinion from that aspect there. Imagine a doctor knowing that this person needs this care, they need it now, but I can't do it because the fact I could lose my license, I could go to prison, and all those things there. I don't think it really produces what we're talking about.
It forces it. You're right. It mandates it. Basically, the government is saying, no matter what, because the issue in the amendment says viability.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it says, viability. And when you think about, so if you see it again, the physician, the male physician who is speaking, he's saying heartbeat. So as long as a heartbeat, so that is for him viability. Now, we can be here all night arguing what that really means. But I tell you what, I don't think that cell at 8 weeks or 10 weeks is going to live outside of my body. And we do not want women to be subjugated to taking matters into their own hands and backdoor underground kind of abortion centers. There's no need for it. And you do not have rampant abortions. It is not like, and they've done studies, I don't have the numbers right now, but it's not like people rush to go get this done willy-nilly. This is a very serious consideration with all types of health considerations, from cardiac health to sickle cell to ectopic pregnancies there are a host of reasons. Cancer, what if the woman's in cancer treatment? There are a host of
happened. All the scenarios you've listed have happened.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to go get permission from an elected official. Really.
And the other thing is this: you have individual women who have grown up for 50 years now under Roe versus Wade. And regardless of what you think about it, when you start saying you're going to take away rights that individuals have, so my daughter now would have far less rights than my wife had, or her grandmother had. But now we're going to limit you. That's just a tough pill to swallow. And I said, that's why I said, yeah, there's a doctor. None of these doctors on television, but the woman and her doctor. The government should not be involved in this whatsoever.
At all. And so what you can definitely bank on what will happen, because I deal with insurance industries all day for what I do in practice of law. But now, you're going to have the insurance industries determining what they're going to cover and what they're not going to cover.
Exactly.
Even more so. So now government is into your health, into the woman's health records, not the man's health records, the woman's health records. Okay, we got it's like peeling an onion here. And it's not very, it's painful. It's painful.
It is. Well, we've covered a lot of ground regarding these amendments, and I'd like to invite you both to come back, because there's a lot more onions to peel here.
This was fun.
This was fun. Have us
Indeed.
back.
Indeed,
still,
I absolutely appreciate you, and I'm glad that Dr. J reached out to you and Attorney Thurston. I prayed about who to get, and you were the only one that came before me.
well, look,
I had a lot of options.
well, let me say this. I'm glad that you chose the two of us. I'm really interested as I sit here thinking about those non-citizen driven initiatives. I just want to put it out there that I'm a no on all four of those, by the way.
Yes.
So I don't know what you all were thinking in terms of saying it's not controversial, but
Oh no, we didn't say that, but these were the ones that people mostly didn't understand. So that's why I'm inviting you back.
I just want to put it out. I just want to put it out there for your audience that I'm a no on the other four.
Yes, and we are in total agreement there.
The right to fish and hunt. What are we knowing about? No.
I'm like you, Perry. I'm no on all the amendments except 3 and 4.
That's
the
correct.
Other ones are as important. Do not skip over them. For your judges, do not skip over the judges.
Please don't.
Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County, straight up. I'm from Jean Marie Middleton. I think that she is the best choice for Palm Beach County to serve as judge. Remember, Middleton, person in the middle. That's easy enough.
Well, we definitely want to encourage people to understand that, because if you overlook things like county judge and a lot of these other elections, you are affecting direct things that happen in your community. Absolutely. Day by day, everyday living. And that's why it's so important inside of this. And sometimes I think that meaning is lost in the midst of all the rhetoric that oftentimes goes into to the commercials, the demonizing of things. And at the end of the day, let me say this, and I say this because of the fact I said this almost 8 months ago, that I believe the year 2024-25 was the year of the woman.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I still believe that with all my heart. I can't kick back on that. But what I do have a problem with is when I see individuals go after women and they go after them as if they're not qualified. All of a sudden, they're not qualified to be. They're not qualified to do. And yet still, they have long-standing records. And listen, like the brilliance that you are, Attorney Gordon, the brilliance that you are. I brag about you in so many different places because of the fact I watch people that are incredibly smart, and you guys know it. I mean, you don't stumble up and be an attorney. You don't stumble into it, right? That's a lot of study. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of perfecting who you are. And for anyone to minimize or to downgrade a person's experience and qualification, and really it's because of their gender or their color, I think it's ridiculous. I think that we need to understand the fact that people have paid their dues, they've earned the right to be where they are, and we need to consider that when we are going to that ballot box.
Absolutely. There's another very important race. I mean, all of the initiatives on the ballot are really, really important. In Palm Beach County, you also have the state attorney's race.
Absolutely.
And so, Alexia Cox is running. She will be the first Black to hold that position and the first woman to hold that position. And she is more than qualified. She is dedicated.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Just hands down. So those are my
we definitely get it. We got to do this again. We'll be back in touch. The invitation is there. Is that right, Dr. Val?
Absolutely.
Come back. And in the words of the song, let's do it again. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Val. Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carrie.
Good to see you. Look forward to it.
Okay, I'll be touching bases with you and also seeing who else we can bring in to talk about these issues that are at hand, because this is crucial. This election is going to be very crucial for us for the next few years. So we need you to get out and vote, vote, vote.